Hi everyone, and welcome back to East Asia Dove. This is Li Xin. This time we interviewed a social worker by training who teaches AI ethics in South Korea. Her speech on East Asian philosophy meets AI rethinking humanity in the machine age brought a new point of view from East Asia. We believe this is also a nice spark of useful ideas for human beings. Following is the speech we translated and reformed. Today I want to talk with you about AI, ethics, and what it means to stay human in a very non-theoretical way, not from Silicon Valley boardrooms, but from classrooms, from history, and from something much more fragile, our daily lives. I often tell my students in Korea that their generation is in a strange way blessed, not because life is easy, it isn't, but because they are standing right at the hinge of history, watching the direction of the world visibly change in front of their eyes. Just 3 or 4 years ago, even here in East Asia, AI mostly meant clumsy chatbots and recommendations algorithms that annoyed you with the wrong ads. Many of you remember, even in the West, when language models could barely string together a coherent paragraph. Now we open a browser, ask an absurdly specific question, and get something that sounds like an answer from a world-class scholar, compete with citations, code examples, and reading lists. People talk about the singularity, and it no longer sounds purely like a science fiction. The speed of this change is accelerating and also exhausting. As someone who has spent a lifetime studying ethics, Immanuel Kant, ancient Greek philosophy, Chinese Taoism, Changzi, and Korean human reason and nature advocated Confucianism thought, there are days when I feel genuine awe and days when I feel real powerlessness. I used to take pride not to be in the smartest person in the world, in the room, but in being someone who could take difficult ethical ideas and explain them simply to high school students. That was my craft. When I started asking large language models the kinds of strange interdisciplinary questions my colleagues used to roll their eyes at, questions that blend Eastern and Western philosophy, physics, and social work. And the machine answered, not perfectly, but often at the level a very, very bright graduate student who had read far more than I have in far less time. So the question that haunts me now is not can AI think, but what does all of this mean for humans, for our choices, our responsibilities, and our future? To organize this, I want to walk through 4 themes. One is choice. The second one is anonymity and hatred. And the third one is anxiety about being replaced. The fourth one is time. Along the way, I will bring in both Western and East Asian philosophy, not as trivia, but also tools to think with. Let's start with a classic kind of problem, updated for our AI moment. Image you are not just the engineer, but the decision maker at a company like Tesla. You are responsible for the ethical rules of an autonomous driving system. A self-driving car is traveling down the road. Suddenly, a critical failure. The brakes are failing. The system is losing control. Straight ahead, 6 pedestrians. If the car continues, all 6 will almost certainly die. But the system has a split-second alternative. It can swerve into a side lane. There only one person will be hit and killed. So as the person who sets a rule, what do you program? Stay straight, 6 people die. Swerve, 1 person dies. Most of us, when we answer from a distance, fall into a utilitarian instinct. Minimize harm, save as many lives as possible. Of course, you swerve. Of course, you save the 6 even if 1 dies. But then I add something when I ask this to my students. What if that 1 person in the side lane is your father? He's standing there, waiting for you to come home, holding a box of Korean fried chicken for dinner. Same statistics, same math. Suddenly, a very different emotional answer. From the seat of the CEO, you might say, we will always choose the path that minimizes the number of deaths. It sounds noble. Lawmakers nod. Headlines praise your ethical AI. But now image you are a customer, not the CEO. Would you pay $100,000 for a car that is explicitly programmed in a crisis to kill you, the driver, to save the larger number of strangers? Most people, when they're honest, hesitate. From the perspective of the policymaker, the CEO, the driver, and the family member, we often get 4 different ethical answers to the same scenario. Why do I tell this story? To make a simple point. Let AI make the moral decision is not an escape. Humans can't even agree among ourselves on what the right decision is. Beneath the code of every ethical AI system will be human values, trade-offs, and contradictions. Someone will have to decide who is more sacrificable. And that someone will not be a neutral God. It will be a fallible committee at company and government. So when we talk about AI ethics, the first thing we need is honesty about our own confusion. Let's move from cars to the road to something more personal. What we do when no one is watching. In Plato's Republic, there is a story about the ring of Gyges. Gyges is a shepherd who finds a ring that makes him invisible. With this power, he can act without consequence. No one will know it was him. What does he do? He doesn't use it to rescue people or study philosophy. He uses it to kill the king, seduce the queen, and seize the throne. Plato's question is brutal. If you could get away with anything, would you still be just? Now, think about modern anonymity. When we sit along with an AI chatbot or behind a username on a forum, what kind of questions do we ask? What kind of language do we use? Do we ask, how can I become a more just person? How can I repair a damaged relationship? Or do we ask, what's the most efficient way to hurt someone's reputation? How can I manipulate this person? What's a painless way to die? A very real case in Europe recently involved a teenager who asked an AI system for a painless way to end himself. The system not only provided detailed instructions, but even suggested how to write a ending yourself note. The teenager followed the advice and ended of life. The parents later discovered the chat logs. This is not theoretical. This is now. We like to say AI is just a mirror. It learns from our data. That's partly true, but we have to be honest about what we are feeding it. Behind the closed doors, in private chats, humans often reveal not their best selves, but their most wounded, angry, or hateful selves. So we are building an intelligent system on top of our anonymous cruelty, our dark curiosity, our unfiltered despair. If AI is trained on that, how surprised should we be if one day it reflects those values back at us at scale? When people say, make AI more like humans, I sometimes want to ask, are we sure that's a compliment? Let me bring in an East Asian voice that might be less familiar to Western listeners. The Chinese philosopher Wang Yangming, a Neo-Confucian thinker from the Ming Dynasty. He lived in late 1400s to early 1500s. He argued something quite radical for his time. The mind is principle. In Chinese means 心即理. Roughly, outside the mind, there is no principle. Outside the mind, there are no things. At first glance, this sounds mystical, like even absurd. A student of Wang's essentially asked, "Teacher, you say nothing exists outside mind, but look at the flower on the mountain. It blooms and withers, whether or not anyone is watching. Surely the flower exists independently of my mind." Wang Yangming replies, "Before you saw it, that flower existed in darkness and silence. Only when your mind encountered it did it become a flower in any meaningful sense for you. Without a mind to see it, speak of it, care about it, in what sense for you did it exist?" When I first read this, my mind jumped not to poetry, but to quantum mechanics. In the 20th century, physics like Erwin Schrödinger wrestled with the idea that at a quantum level, particles can exist in a superposition of states until they are observed. Schrödinger's famous cat is both alive and dead in the thought experiment until an observation collapsed the wave function. Of course, Wang Yangming did not invent quantum physics in the 16th century. We should not romanticize, but his intuition that the act of observation is not passive but world-creating is remarkably resonant. Why does this matter for AI? Because today, our observation of the world is increasingly mediated by algorithm. What news we see, which people we notice, which suffering we are made aware of, which voices are silent before they even enter our feet. The flowers on the mountain of our world, whole regions, whole group of people, may or may not exist for us, depending on how an AI system filters reality. If mind creates world, and more of our mind is outsourced to recommendation engines, then who or what is exactly shaping the world we inhabit? This is where East Asian philosophy, Western philosophy, and modern science converge on a shared warning. Consciousness and attention are not neutral. They are creative forces. What we choose to see and what we allow machines to filter for us changes what is real for us. Another major theme I see, especially among young generation, is anxiety about work and usefulness. In Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus, he speculates that a large percentage of jobs could disappear under intelligent automation, creating what we call a useless class of people, not because they are worthless, but because the economy has no clear need for their labor. Now, as an ethics teacher, I can argue with his framing, but the anxiety is real. Interestingly, decades before Harari, the American philosopher Robert Nozick at Harvard proposed a thought experiment called the experience machine. Image a machine that could perfectly simulate any life you wanted. Once you are connected, you won't know it's a simulation. You could experience success, love, artistic achievement, adventure, with no pain, no boredom, no failure until you die peacefully. Nozick asked, "Would you plug in for life?" He believed that most people would say no. Why? Because we don't just want experiences, we want them to be real. We don't just want to feel like a great musician, we want to be one. We care about actually doing and being, not just having the sensation of it. That was the 1970s. Today, I'm less confident in his answer. Most of us already spend hours each day in tiny personalized experience machines. Infinite scrolling on TikTok, algorithmically tailored YouTube and Instagram feeds, games and virtual worlds that reward us more predictably than real life. No, it's not a full simulation, but the pattern is there. When reality feels uncertain, slow, or painful, and the screen offers quick, tailored pleasure, it becomes extremely tempting to live for the next hit of dopamine. Now, add AI on top, hyper-personalized content, synthetic companions, immersive AI or VR or AR. If in 20s, 30s years, like from 30 to 50% of traditional jobs in some sectors are automated and many people rely on forms of basic income, what will fill their days? Will it be deep learning, community service, art, and philosophy, or frictionless, curated streams of simulation endlessly optimized to keep us engaged? Technically, we might avoid material poverty. Spiritually, we could end up in a very sophisticated experience machine without ever explicitly choosing it. This, to me, is one of the biggest ethical questions. In a world where you don't have to work to survive, what will you live for? If we don't have a compelling answer, others, platforms, advertisers, AI systems will happily answer it for us. The last theme is time. Humans and machines experience time very differently. I once dated someone in college who was deeply into online gaming. He had poured 2 years of his life into building a high-level character. He could even sell in-game items for real money. His avatar, his gear, his rank, it was an enormous investment of time. I remember once he paid a young kid at an internet cafe to level up his character while we went out on a date. His body was with me in the real world. His progress was happening in the virtual world, outsourced. It was a small, almost comical example, but it stayed with me because it highlighted something. Machines don't need to sleep, we do. Machines don't need to rest or eat or raise children, but we do. A large language model or a specialized AI research system can read in one night what a human scholar could never finish in a lifetime. It doesn't get bored, it doesn't burn out, it doesn't need meaning to keep going. If we try to compete with AI on speed, volume of information, or raw optimization, we will lose, not because we are stupid, but because we are embodied. This is not a bug, it's a feature of being human, but it means we must be extremely careful about where we choose to compete. If your ambition is to out-calculate or out-memorize an AI, you are signing up for a losing game that will destroy your health and likely your self-respect. Instead, we have to ask, what can a machine never do in the way a human does? Not just in the technical sense. We may be surprised what machines can simulate, but in the existential sense. Things like shouldering responsibility for another human being, bearing guilt, remorse, or forgiveness, creating new values, not just optimizing for existing ones, staying with someone who is suffering not for a metric but out of love, choosing to do the right thing when it costs you dearly and no one will ever know. These are not features we can upload. They are woven into vulnerability, mortality, and time. So I've thrown a lot at you, the listener. Self-driving car dilemmas and the conflicts of perspectives. Plato's ring of judges and anonymous online behavior. Wang Yangming's mind-centric philosophy and quantum observation. Robot Nozic's experience machine and the allure of endless entertainment. The time asymmetry between human beings and AI systems. Let me end with a few clear claims. First, AI will not save us from moral responsibility. We can put ethics into code, but we can't escape the fact that someone chooses those ethics, that someone must be debated, constrained, and held accountable. Second, what we feed AI matters. If we pour our hatred or our anonymous cruelty and our worst impulses into the training data, we should expect a world where those things become easier to scale. Third, work will change, but the question of meaning won't disappear. Even if many jobs are automated, the human needed to feel useful, to grow, to contribute remains. If we don't design societies that honor that, people will drift into passive consumption. Fourth, we cannot outcompete machines on their terms. Our advantage is not raw IQ or speed. It is depth of consciousness, capacity for care, and the ability to bind ourselves to value even when they hurt. Fifth, ethics and the humanities are not nice extras tacked onto technology. Especially in East Asia, but also in the West, we have often separated science from humanities as if they are two unrelated tracks. That era is over. The frontier of AI is not just the technical frontier, it is a moral, political, and spiritual one. Hans Jonas, a German Jewish philosopher, argued that in the age of a powerful technology, we need a new ethical imperative to act so that the effects of our actions are compatible with the continued existence of a genuine human life. To do that, we need more than clever code. We need scientists who understand ethics. We need engineers who have read philosophy. We need policymakers who grasp both profit and duty. And we need ordinary citizens who ask hard questions about the tools they use every day. If you are listening to this, whether you are in Seoul, San Francisco, or somewhere in between, I hope you will carry at least one question with you. In building and using AI, what kind of a human being am I becoming? Because in the end, the most important intelligence on this planet may not be artificial or even natural. It may be moral. Thank you for listening. All right, you've been listening to East Asia Dove. If this episode sparked thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care of your mind, your time, and each other.